Across the vast land of China, tens of thousands of towns and cities, large and small, are scattered. When night falls, they glitter like stars on the earth. However, beyond the land, there is another city one that floats on the sea. You can't see its lights, yet it invisibly protects the prosperity you see before you. This city at sea has over 2,000 permanent residents, cafeterias, hospitals, libraries, post offices, supermarkets, and other essential infrastructure. It's truly got everything. Not only that, this city can also move across the vast ocean at a speed of 50 kilometers per hour. What's more, the dozens of aircraft in the city can take off at a moment's notice, providing a protective escort over a radius of more than 1,000 kilometers to stand guard. Even today, looking across the more than 200 countries and regions in the world, only 8 possess such cities at sea. They've been given a special name, aircraft carriers. So, what does it actually take to have an aircraft carrier? Is it really that difficult to build one? In the rest of this video, we'll try to answer that question using a medium-sized aircraft carrier as an example. To answer that question, but first, you'll need to have more than 500 supporting companies ready, a construction crew of 5,000 people, and just a little bit of funding for construction. Then we can start building our aircraft carrier. This medium-sized aircraft carrier has a full load displacement of around 60,000 tons, which is only about 1/3 the size of our country's largest container ship. All you have to do is lift and assemble over 200 segmented modules one by one, lifting and piecing them together one by one, and the whole construction will be complete. And on its expansive flight deck, there's an angled deck set at a 7-degree angle to the ship's centerline. This not only makes the space feel more open, but also allows for separate, independent areas for takeoff, landing, and parking aircraft. And finally, an area is laid out on the right side. An island that takes up just 3% of the deck is used for dispatch and command. And you've got yourself an aircraft carrier. It all seems pretty straightforward and doesn't even look that difficult. But is that really the case? In terms of actual size, this carrier's length is 315 meters, with a width of 75 meters, which is like 3 soccer fields laid end to end. Its height is equivalent to a building of over 20 stories. Inside its hull, the ship is divided top to bottom into 10 decks, housing living quarters, hangar bays, armories, fuel tanks, and boiler rooms totaling over 3,000 compartments. Among these, the hangar bay used for storing aircraft spans 3 full decks vertically, with not a single support pillar in its over 4,000 square meter area, forming one enormous, open cavity. Meanwhile, on the starboard side of the ship, the 2 elevators responsible for moving aircraft between the hangar and the flight deck create vulnerable openings in the hull. Both of these require special reinforced structural designs. A hull this massive must also be built using special grade steel to prevent corrosion from seawater and to withstand enemy attacks. The steel for the flight deck has the most demanding requirements of all. It has to be as thick as a large dictionary, yet be able to withstand the tremendous impact of carrier aircraft, weighing dozens of tons landing and taking off repeatedly. Its yield strength can be up to 3 times that of ordinary steel. Although this aircraft carrier has a runway, its longest is just over 200 meters, less than 1/10 the length of a typical military airbase runway. To generate enough lift on such a short runway, the carrier-based aircraft needs some external help. For example, by installing a ski jump ramp angled at 14 degrees at the front of the deck, they are able to complete their takeoff and to land in such a short distance. The aircraft must use its tailhook dot model to hook onto the arresting cable laid out on the runway and use the hydraulic braking system under the deck to slow down. What's even more difficult is if a carrier-based aircraft fails to successfully hook the arresting cable, it must immediately perform a go-around and repeat the landing process. This means a carrier-based aircraft not only can't slow down when landing, but instead needs to accelerate to 250 kilometers per hour, which is about takeoff speed. And at this moment, the arresting cable, with a diameter of only about 35 millimeters, withstands a pulling force that will reach more than 4.5 times the carrier aircraft's own weight. This means that every single takeoff and landing is an enormous test of the pilot's skill and the carrier's facilities. And this carrier's island, though it only occupies 3% of the deck area, must integrate the aviation bridge, navigation bridge, command bridge, various equipment rooms, as well as over 80 transmitters, over 50 receivers, and nearly 100 antennas, shouldering the carrier's core functions. Just like a brain. Finally, add in nearly 10 years of preparation and years of maritime affairs, taking about 15 years from start to finish. Only then could we finally have this aircraft carrier. But that's not all. We also need 36 carrier-based fighter jets specially developed for the carrier, 12 carrier-based helicopters, specially trained pilots, over 2,000 crew members, as well as at least 3 air defense destroyers, 2 anti-submarine frigates, 2 nuclear-powered attack submarines, and 1 comprehensive supply ship. Only then can we finally form a carrier strike group with 3 lines of defense, its carrier-based aircraft, its various escort ships, and the carrier's own weapon systems, carrier strike group. And only then could we say we truly had a combat-ready aircraft carrier. It is not just a massive ship. It is a city at sea, a symbol of a nation's comprehensive power. This is also why, before 2019, of the 8 countries with active aircraft carriers, only 3 were able to independently build carriers of over 60,000 tons. That is, until December 17, 2019, when the official commissioning of China's Shandong carrier meant that this group had a brand new member. And at that moment, more than 90 years had already passed since the beginning of China's aircraft carrier dream. Although as far back as 1928, the acting head of the Navy, Admiral Chen Xiaoquan, had first proposed the idea of building an aircraft carrier. But the turbulent era gave a weakened China no opportunity to even try. In fact, in 1937, the fleet that the Chinese Navy had painstakingly built up was almost completely annihilated in a life-or-death battle against Japan's carrier fleets that lasted just over 100 days. It was all wiped out. Even after the founding of the new China, we proposed building an aircraft carrier time and again, but were repeatedly forced to stop, faced with exorbitant costs, a weak industrial base, and a severe lack of core technology among many other restrictions. We had no choice but to give up. Whether it was in 1980, when the father of the Chinese aircraft carrier, General Liu Huaqing, led a Chinese delegation to set foot on a real aircraft carrier for the very first time, or in 2001, when pilot Wang Wei, flying fighter jet 8-1-1-9-2, made the ultimate sacrifice in the South China Sea. China's own aircraft carrier remained an unfulfilled dream. The turning point came in 2002. That year, the former Soviet aircraft carrier Varyag, purchased from Ukraine by the Hong Kong-based Zhonglot Group, finally, after repeatedly encountering blocked shipping lanes and maritime storms, it took 3 years and a journey across half the globe to arrive at the inner harbor of Dalian, Liaoning. And yet, a rusty vessel like this, with its construction only 68% complete, would 10 years later in 2012 make its grand debut as the Liaoning in that same year. China's own carrier-based fighter jet, the J-15, also successfully took off from and landed on the deck of this carrier. It's known as the Flying Shark. Nearly a century after the aircraft carrier's debut, China finally had one of its own. But just 7 years later, a carrier, built entirely from scratch, the Shandong, burst onto the scene. Compared to the Liaoning, its island is smaller, providing more deck space. Its hangar is larger, allowing the number of carrier-based aircraft it can hold to be increased by 50%. Its radar, communication systems, power plant, and avionics systems were also further upgraded. But is this the end of the line? Of course not. Our Liaoning and Shandong are both conventionally powered carriers that run on heavy fuel oil. Although the technology is mature and maintenance is simple, and their performance is sufficient for the Navy's current needs, there is still a considerable gap in terms of cruising speed and endurance when compared to nuclear-powered carriers. The aircraft on both of these carriers use ski-jump takeoffs, meaning they must rely on a combination of the carrier's forward speed and the aircraft's own power to meet the requirements for takeoff, compared to catapult-assisted takeoffs using steam catapults or electromagnetic catapults. This method, to some extent, constrains the carrier aircraft's fuel capacity, weapons payload, and takeoff frequency. And yet, every one of these challenges, right from the year the Variog's refit began, had already been included in the plans for the next 10 or even 20 years. A 10-year plan with challenges waiting for us to overcome one by one. So now, as we return to the question from the beginning of the video, perhaps you already have your answer. Just as in 1993, when the director of the Black Sea shipyard, Makarov, was asked what it would take to complete the construction of the Variag, he replied, "To complete her, I would need the Central Committee of the Soviet Party, the State Planning Commission, the Military Industrial Commission, 9 defense industry departments, 600 associated specialists, and 8,000 partner factories. In short, what I need ... is a great nation." But at that time, a fragmented Soviet Union was destined to never realize that dream. Fortunately, however, in the China of today, the vessel once known as the Variag has been given new life. Today, with our own two hands, in less than 100 years, we've gone from a few ironclads and wooden boats that had all but lost their fighting strength to leaping into the age of aircraft carriers, from having not a single rifle to our name, to building a modern people's army. And one day, we will surely fulfill the mission this army has shouldered since the day it was founded. The Nanchang Uprising, set for 4 a.m., August 1st. The signal, 3 gunshots. The password, unify the nation.